I'm Anna Webb. Welcome to A Dog's Life. Hey, Mr. Binks, you always hear me chatting about how the world around dogs has really got a little out of hand, with so many people, so many voices, confused conversations, and a massive worry about the rising number of dog bites. Well, that's why we're jumping on Zoom now to talk to dog behaviourist Hannah Molloy, who's not only helped put together dog bite sessions for APDAWG, but is a great person championing the welfare of dogs. Hannah, welcome to A Dog's Life. I'm so excited that we're about to have our long-awaited chat.
I know, I can't wait. It's so lovely to be with you, Anna. We've caught up so many times and it's great to be here.
Well, yes. And firstly, huge apologies for not making it to the second APDAWG dog bite session, which you single-handedly have coordinated, the first part where I was at and the second part, which I just want to say I applaud you because you are standing out, I think. Please don't think this sounds patronizing. I don't mean it. I mean this genuinely as a compliment. People are really saying you're such a doer rather than everyone kind of just ongoingly moaning about the situation of dogs living in a modern world. You're constructively making positive change and bringing up debate, which is very healthy and great.
Oh, bless you, Anna. Coming from you, that is a huge compliment. I think it's really important to look at solutions because we can all moan, can't we? And I'll be honest with you, it's a huge honour to be able to host these events and to be trusted. Mark Abraham has got a huge career in campaigning, and he really has sort of tread the boards of Parliament, as it were. So he knows what he's doing, and it's wonderful to get to work alongside APDAWG. But it isn't just me. I'm throwing it out there. There is a group of campaigners, and we're all working together to pick the guests and think about the topics that we're talking about within the dog bite events problem series. So yeah, just shout out to Debbie Luckin and Nick Crampton, and some other amazing background campaigners who would rather not be named. So it's very important because obviously the huge news hit in January about how dog bite incidents was it doubled or tripled through the pandemic, Hannah? Yeah, it tripled, but actually over the last 20 years, I'm unsure as to where the last 5-year statistic has come from, because it does kind of focus our attention on the pandemic a bit too much. And a lot of experts have said, to be honest with you, it was on the rise for the last 20 years. It's been getting a lot worse. So has the pandemic made it a bit worse? Yes, definitely. Dog behaviour has got a little worse in rescue centres, but I don't think it's just the pandemic. Dog bites are rising faster than the dog population, so it isn't just that.
Yes, no, it hasn't, despite the Dangerous Dogs Act, I guess, which really highlights how we won't go into all of that now because there's a lot more I want to talk about you really. But despite that, proving this ridiculous knee-jerk legislation. I was on GB News actually talking about it all. Typically I can't remember the MP's name. He presents the mid-morning show on a Saturday on GB News.
Okay.
Which was Peter. He is a Conservative MP, and he was actually very behind, keeping the DDA in place. So and it was really interesting when I was talking to him, a friend of mine that was watching said he was so glued, Anna, and listening to what you were saying. So that's all good. And the more conversations we're having out there with people like that in Parliament, the better, really, because obviously I feel at the moment pets and dogs as well, particularly have gone off the radar a bit in Parliament. There was all this great hot air going on. Yeah, we're going to bring in a separate law for dog theft. Yes, we're still waiting on the Animal Welfare Bill to be heard again. No dates. I know there's a lot going on in the world. There's also the Renters Reform Bill. People are facing clever evictions by landlords at the minute, with landlords doing nasty things like doubling people's rent because, they've moved in with a pet. So it's not sort of technical eviction, but it is by pressure, you know, Hannah. There's
Yeah.
so I think everyone has to up the ante, don't you?
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's a call really right now for, there's so many separate campaigns that all shout for attention. I think the beautiful thing I've seen with the Dog Bite event series is, oh gosh, it touches on so many different areas of legislation that need addressing. And it does kind of call all of those campaigners into one place to say, hey, do you know what? We can get behind each other's campaigns and unify, because they all play into the responsible dog ownership narrative. I mean, my goodness me, if we had a responsible dog ownership course that everybody had to take, first of all, we'd need to regulate trainers and behaviourists, I think, to really do that very well. But once that was done and we had a sort of national narrative on what responsible dog ownership should look like, then that would play into, landlords being able to say, oh, well, you've taken the course, so actually you have a well-behaved dog, etc., etc. They all connect. They're all interconnected. And I think it is just time. And everybody's got that feeling right now that we just push for this because, people are dying and getting horrifically bitten. And I don't, we've all got a part to play in that, whether you're a dog owner or not, in my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, now we are, if it is 1 in 3 households now have a dog. I mean, you've got to remember, I'm quite old. So I'm 57. So I remember an age when dogs didn't kill people. There were no headlines. Maybe they did, but they certainly didn't hit headlines. Owning a dog was not awfully popular, actually. You would go to the woods and not see anyone else. I remember for many, many years. But now, we're living in an age where, for good reason, people would love to live with a dog. I mean, I couldn't think, I champion that. I do that. I live alone. I don't want to live with another human at all. I have my family, which is my 2 dogs and my cat. That is in my family, and it's fabulous, the joy they bring, and people saw all the benefits in lockdown, but I just think, we're letting the dogs down because we're human and we're lazy and lots of reasons, right?
Absolutely. I mean, my heart for dogs came after I did a degree in animal behaviour, and I came across the medical detection dogs research that dogs could detect cancer just after it had happened, and I was like, holy moly, like, what? Wait a second, like, if that's true. And I just had that moment in time where I just saw dogs and humans across the globe hanging out with each other for so long that they had this, not only the physical capacity to do that job, but also that they're sensitive enough to want to tell us about stuff they think that we don't see, which is so cool. And then I realized, like, hold on a minute, dogs are our species. Of all of the species I could have studied as a behaviourist, and I could have generalised, I could have been a GP and worked with horses and bunnies and all sorts of different animals, but my heart just bled for dogs because, we created them. They haven't got a natural environment. We are their natural environment. We decide who breeds with who, what they eat, where they go, where they sleep, and we have to take corporate responsibility for this species and its interactions with its environment. So yeah, I totally feel you. It's really, really difficult. I think a lot of people get upset because there are different ways of living with a dog. I was speaking to an MP just the other day who was saying, I was brought up on farms and my dogs would live outside except if they were sick or, they'd been to the vets, and then they'd live in the scullery and they get 1 meal a day. And now I've got 3 ladies in my office who don't call them dogs. They call them doggy woggies. And I said, well, we have to incorporate that. That is just the way that we are living with dogs right now. And dogs
the choice.
Adapted. That's it.
Well, yeah, but they have adapted and they haven't adapted, you see, I'd say. Yes. I mean, look, I'm a canine nutritionist as well. So you hit on diet. So that's when I start to go, yes. Where should we begin? I mean, the greed of the pet food industry is just staggering. And crazy. The idea that we're now going to feed carnivores as vegans, just seriously, I mean, it does make my head spin, and green gas will come out of my ears. Because Dan Shaw, who I'm dying to actually, get connected with, I feel a podcast coming on with him, because Sue said, Anna, the most interesting thing you would have found at the second session was this little 10-minute chat with Dan Shaw, as he really talks about neurobiology and the interrelationship of his findings and dog bites, which focuses on nutrition, which I think is very, very interesting. But yeah, I mean, what did you think of his findings?
Oh, he's amazing. Daniel has such an incredible brain and such enthusiasm for expressing some of the science. I think he's doing a master's right now, so he's reading loads and he's explaining it to us. Sometimes it can get quite sciencey for those that are sort of more lay, but to be honest with you, we need it. We need to understand some of the biological processes and systems that are happening, so things that would impact reactivity, and he just brought such delicious content for everybody in a really refreshing way. So yeah, big love. And that's Animal Behaviour Kent, should you want to look up Daniel Shaw. He's got quite an unfortunately common name. I think there's an agility chap who's also called Daniel Shaw. So
send me his details, then that would be lovely. But that's the whole thing. And as you were basically saying earlier, it's all about a holistic approach and really understanding the whole aspect of looking after a dog. Absolutely. And the effort, because owning a dog isn't easy. You've got to go out in the pouring rain, it's cold, and it takes a lot of commitment, which I just worry as well that the demographic of dog owners, Hannah, I don't know what you think about this, is getting a bit young. I mean, I was considered completely bonkers bringing Molly into my life, my first bull terrier, when I was 37. Not that I would ever use a dog walker, because I think owning a dog, you walking it is part of the holistic picture, so that you get to know your dog and you work through challenges with your dog and you spend time with your dog. Because if you don't spend time with your dog, you don't get to know your dog, and therefore you don't know how to read your dog in real life situations. So but there weren't any in 2002 or doggy creches, and I just see that whole aspect. There weren't really many groomers. It's almost like in 20 years it is literally exploded. And the food as well. I mean, back in 2002 there wasn't the raw balanced complete raw that I'm very much a fan of. You had to do it yourself, which was fine if you knew what you were doing, which fortunately I did, because I grew up in the household I did. But we digress. But I think it's sort of just painting hopefully a broad brushstroke picture. But you've really seen all of this, and rather than talking about it, is it true, Hannah, you have trained 10,000 dogs?
Yes, I have.
Wow. Is that in group classes, or are those all one-to-ones? Because that's going some.
It's a lot, isn't it? It's collectively. So, I ran an inner city dog training company in Birmingham, and I was invited to start trading there as from Birmingham City Council were like, please, can you help us with our dog problem, back in 2010? And I was like, yeah. And so that was in one-to-ones, and then that was in group classes. So I think we ended up with something around the region of 4 classes with 8 dogs in each. And then at one point we spread out to having like 3 different locations that we were training in at one point. That's when my head was exploding. So yeah, we really have just been getting down to working with just so many dogs, training school dogs, working with assistance dogs, and obviously rehabilitating those who've had a sticky time. So it is crazy, but it's the human narrative for me that I find fascinating, and ultimately human culture. So when you talk about dog food, actually what I love doing is going back through history and going, okay, hold on a minute, when did we start doing that? And actually the dog food industry and the Kennel Club and Crufts came out of the same place. We wanted to sell dog food because a chap was like, I've got this ship's biscuit and I want to sell it. And so they combined. So actually Crufts was originally designed to sell dog food, which is interesting, isn't it?
Well, I think he wanted a dog show. He was in the Business Design Centre just down the road, from Hackney. And he wanted, because it was the Victorian era at the time, to put it all into context, where they'd spend a huge amount of time and effort shaping different breeds of dogs to help live in the Victorian era, when, we didn't have sewers, so rats were running around everywhere. Can you imagine? So if it hadn't been for my little dog, Mr. Binks, who is an English toy terrier designed in the Victorian era of fine distinction, his ancestors, arguably helped us not all die of bubonic plague.
That's it. Amazing.
So where would we have been without the toy terrier, that's now facing extinction because everyone wants a cockapoo. Over to you, Hannah.
And the thing is, that is it, isn't it? Humans are constantly adapting and evolving. And what we had in the history books is dogs that were bred for particular jobs. And now what we're moving into is the job of the pet dog. And we really need to think about that, like intentionally think about what we need for the future generation of pet dog owners. There are so many owners who, you know, whether you agree with them or not, say, listen, I want a low impact dog who doesn't need a lot of exercise, who doesn't shed, who doesn't require very much from me. And so many then go down the route of getting maybe a bracky dog who, God love them, just can't breathe. They just can't breathe or move quickly because of the way their bodies are built. And I would argue are in quite large amounts of pain, actually, as would many of the vets and welfare organisations. And that's what we've moved into. And we've sort of normalised a slightly more lazy, less impactful dog. Or we've gone the other route and gone, well, I'm going to get a dog that looks super cute, like a cockapoo, and forget that, hold on a minute, I've got 2 sets of retriever in there.
Oh, I
and
know.
weirdly, my dog steals my pants. Like, you know, you're like, oh, it's hard.
Yeah, I mean, what you're saying, Hannah, really is very much now the vibe, if you like. So I was talking to Karen Brophy, who's developed her legs initiative, really, and enrichment course, which is brilliant, and it's great. So we're kind of all talking about the right thing. I think everyone's seeing not neglect exactly out there, because when I do consults, I really have to scale them down now, as I find I put so much emotion and into it that it's tough. And I'm noticing actually that I'm not the only person that feels that, which does make me feel hugely better, because I was thinking, I can't, this is too much now. This is so too much, because you're having to explain to people why perhaps having a silver Labrador, get that apartment, I know, without a garden isn't ideal, and because people are marketing, oh yeah, sure, you can live with a dog in a high rise, it's great, you know, yeah, really. So stuff like that. But what I'd love to talk to you about as well, because on this, you know, are we breeding the right dogs? Do we have to breed a new type of dog to fit with a new type of human? I mean, surely it's up to us humans to adapt around the dogs. Why? We've lived with dogs for 30,000 years. So how come in 20 years we've managed to wreck everything? This is what I can't understand, and I find deeply saddening. But what did you discover in Norway? Because I'm half Swedish, so I've always seen the light as being Scandinavia for lots of reasons, actually. So I'd love to know, because they were bold and they banned the breeding, didn't they? The year before last, of the Bulldog and the Cavalier King Charles Spaniel. So what took you to Norway and why?
So that was the International Dog Breeding Symposium, and I was invited to speak on the morphology of dogs and how that can actually impact their communication. So I was bringing a really quite a fresh perspective. Many of the speakers were talking about BOAS, which for those who aren't in the know is a breathing disorder that is often found in bracky or squash-faced dogs, I call them, dogs with a very short nose. And it was a terrifying, unanimous decision, to be honest with you, Anna, that these dogs are really beyond being able to be outcrossed to health. So most of our countries have, you know, a veterinary code that states that you cannot breed individuals if you know that the puppies are going to suffer a physical malfunction or abnormality or a genetic disorder. And yet we do it all the time, and it's a really difficult conversation to have with people, because we love our breeds. Dr. Rowena Packer brought such a beautiful perspective on, you know, our blindness, our breed blindness. Like, as you say, Anna, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and you know, many people look at a pug and they're like, I cannot imagine a more beautiful dog in all my life, because that's what we've been looking at so frequently. But we really need to take the lid off our thinking when it comes to breeding dogs in this next generation, because we have become normalized to dogs who have born into physically painful bodies with extreme conformation. And then again, vet Emma Milne, amazing woman, brought the perspective that, you know what, it's not just dogs and it's not just BOAS. We're doing this across loads of species, like lop-eared bunnies really struggle to thermoregulate. They're super cute, but actually these really long ears that we like the look of are causing loads of issues. The Scottish fold cat with its bendy ears, horses that are being bred for dressage that are being bred with such bendy necks that they end up with horrible mutative conformation issues that affect the animal. And we are obsessed with excessive featuring. And even in, you know, if you start to look at, so I was speaking to somebody who is in the obedience world, and they were looking at some of the obedience competitions they saw at Crufts this year. And even in obedience, there is a stylized way of doing obedience competitions now, such that the dog is walking almost sitting. Every time it walks, it's ready to sit, and its back legs are bent. And you know, you watch these people who are stretching their dogs before they do an obedience competition. You're like, this is not normal. We really need to rein our behavior in and go, why have we done this? Because it's easy to spread and put on social media. And
well, it's very competitive, the obedience world, you know, and it, you know, does tend to be border collies in the main that are used for agility. And the particular sport I have a particular issue with in terms of with injuries is flyball, I must say. I mean, the way they hit that, whatever they do, it's the only thing I've never done, actually, flyball myself, obviously, but you know, because I'm a great fan of working an agility course, but you know, you've got to do it, making sure the dog is able to do it. I worked one bull terrier doing an agility course, and he flattened the whole course when we were chatting. He thought, this is great. No, seriously, it was very, very funny. And then he loved it so much. He loved the dog walk so much, you know, walking the plank. He just went up there and went, right, well, I'm not coming down. I'm going to stay up here for as long as I want, you know. So I think, exactly. I do hear what you're saying, although, you know, I do feel as well, we do have to train our dogs.
We do. And the thing to bear in mind is that if we're going to create environments for community that are based on judgment and competition, what we're going to get and draw and attract are, you know, people who like the best of the best, and the best of the best will get better every time. You look at television, reality television, season by season gets more and more extreme because it has to be better than last time. And so, you know, again, we've got to look at culture and say, hold on a minute, can we rewind and come back to what does it look like to have a really lovely dog that is enjoying spending time with its owner? What does that look like? Can we breed for temperament and a decent ability to be social in the environment rather than a sort of hyped version? It doesn't surprise me, Anna, that my owners who've got border collies and live in inner cities have done so because they've seen amazingly well-trained border collies. So, you know, they see them and they go, oh, that's the best trained dog ever. If I get one of those, then I can train it to be a superstar. And actually, you're looking at super hardcore professionals who have trained for many, many years in the region of obedience, and it's not an easy thing to do to maintain a border collie to that level of obedience. So yeah, tricky. It's culture and behaviour, and that's honestly what I just love to study. And I think we all need to be a bit more open-minded about why did we start doing that thing that we do? When did we start doing it? Why are we still doing it? Or do we need to continue doing it? And I would argue the breed debate needs to fit into that category. Why do we have this breed of dog? Why does it look like that? Why does it behave that way? Is it nature? Is it nurture? And what do we want? What do we need in the next generation of dog owners?
Yeah. I would say the last thing you said there was the most pertinent, to be fair. It's always a combination of nature versus nurture. In my view, I believe it's a 50-50 thing. And I do believe our dog breeding in this country needs to shape up and, you know, take some advice, if you like, from Sweden and Norway in particular, but also on health, you know, because it's things like, for example, neutering, right? There's so much science around you. Oh, well, I had him neutered because, you know, the vet said it would stop his reactivity. Then, funnily enough, he gets worse. And there's science, you know, to concur on that now. Of course, in Norway, it's illegal to spay or neuter as an extreme statement, really. And you compare that to, say, America, where they're neutered pretty much when they come out of the womb, you know, when they're born. You can neuter at what is the age age in America. It's very young. I mean, it's
super young.
crazy.
It's like, 6 weeks or something ridiculous.
Yeah. So I mean, and when you think the reproductive system does a lot more, than obviously just reproduce.
Absolutely.
It's part of the holistic dog. So you're stripping. I mean, you'd never spay your daughter.
No.
So, or ask your daughter when they're 4 to have a hysterectomy. I mean, but this is what we are. So, and that will affect behavior. So
Huge.
when you say it's cultural, I think we could talk for hours, but I just think, it's important. I love Norway, and in Sweden, people don't neuter because they think it's wrong. It's ethically, it's considered, it's the reverse of what we have here. Although I do see that changing, actually, and it is all down to science that only came out in 2013. So, about sadly, in this study, which I've talked about with Dr. Lise Hansen, one of my favorite vets, she's a holistic vet as well as a, normal conventional vet. And these are the vets that are really challenging trends, if you like, or the status quo, because we have to move, as you say, but it's not only, I don't think it's only in breeding dogs that, in inverted commas, are going to be suitable for the humans that we have in our society at the moment. I think a lot of it has got to do with social media. I mean, I always say dogs and TV never mix, right? And now you look at Instagram, I mean, it's off the graph what people are thinking is funny to film, for example, their bull terrier doing, and knowing the breed so well. I just think, oh God, and to get a laugh or to get clicks, likes,
Yeah, it's really hard. And isn't that an interesting measure potentially of trust of your nation? So, honestly, the spay your dog narrative was created to reduce strays. Let's not mess around. Like, if you don't trust your population, it's a really good idea to encourage them all to spay and neuter their dogs so that you can control the dog population. And I love that Sweden have enough trust, to be honest with you, in their population. There's enough responsibility that is embedded in the culture that they can understand and respect and carefully breed dogs or keep dogs that are entire and intact. And I hear your heart, Anna. I was very much anti the neuter narrative for a long time because I saw the effect that it had on behaviour. But equally, I do look at the general populace and go, oh my days, sometimes actually you've got a really broken dog and you're just going to breed it. I'm not sure that that's a good thing for you to have access to, is the ability to, artificially inseminate and then take your dog for a C-section and create a ton more really painful dogs who
but Hannah, not everyone is doing that. I mean, please don't fall over, but Prudence isn't spayed. She's 8. Has she ever had any puppies?
Oh, no, come on.
No.
I know.
Do I want any puppies from Prudence? No. It's very easy. It's just because she's not spayed, it doesn't mean to say she's going to get pregnant.
Yeah, it's true.
And so really we have to balance all of this, because vets earn a huge amount of money just by routinely spaying at 6 months. So you have to bear that in mind. I mean, I've done a lot of chatting about flea treatments lately and about the fact that vets earn £178 million a year from parasite control in dogs and cats, which is a lot of money for them to forsake. But they're going to have to, because these treatments are now killing our rivers. So this is the sort of knock-on holistic picture that certainly over my years matters, I think. So what would you recommend if somebody comes to you as Amplified Behaviour, your brilliant business, and they say, look, Hannah, I'm really wanting to do this right. How do you advise what type of dog for someone to get?
Oh, I love that question. So I have a sort of a quiz that I do with my clients when they come to me and ask me about the dog. A really good question, I think, for you to ask yourself is, on a bad day, what's the maximum amount of exercise that you can give a dog? I think that's a really nice place to start. I'll tend to look into, the family's dynamic. I love asking owners as well a really broad spectrum question, which is, describe dog life. And just let them use all of the words that come to them. And I'll ask the children separately, and I'll ask the parents if they're in a family like that. And then we'll look through a breed book together, and we'll look at, I want to know, what is a good looking dog to you? So And then once we have all of that information, we kind of create this cool mind map together, and then I'll steer them. So if they're all like, yes, amazing, well, we've got 7 children and we live in a 2-bedroom flat and we really love huskies, you know, that's where obviously my professional experience can come in and go, I know you like the look of them. They are pretty, aren't they? Maybe not though. So, and it very much is individual to the person. Yeah, I love doing that. It is one, and then what we'll do is we'll look at the various places that you can get a dog. So if they've decided they want a rescue versus a puppy, then we'll actually look at some rescue websites, and I'll do a little bit of cheeky training that helps them to read between the lines of some of the rescue dog posts and go, okay, I used to write these posts, so I can tell you that this post really means this is likely and this is likely and this is likely, and this dog would probably be really good at this and this and this. And the same for puppy shopping. So I will show them how to spot a trader, or what I would argue to be a puppy farmer, based on a series of pictures, because those of us in the industry can see them. We can spot them. I think when you look at things like Pre-Loved and Gumtree, and you go, okay, this person has done really good at, like, they're following this trend and they're using this wording, but actually if we look at some of these pictures, I can see X, Y, or Z, and I'm not going to tell you because then the market will adapt. So yes, I love doing that with clients and just helping them to shop properly for the dog that is perfect for their environment. But to be honest with you, humans are mental and wonderful, and often some people will get a dog that is totally, or I would argue, is not the dog for them, and yet they form a beautiful bond and they adapt to each other. So, you know, with the best will in the world, yeah, definitely get advice. Definitely look into rescue dogs if you are seeking to get a dog of your own. But highly recommend getting training, advice and support from a qualified behaviourist and trainer to do that well. So, yeah.
Yeah, and you know, let's not forget that the dog is man's best friend. Yeah. And you know, I agree with you. The work of medical detection dogs and the anecdotal studies that they did, what inspired their work. So I launched the charity, see.
Did you? Yeah. Oh, I did not know that, Anna.
Yeah,
well
in 2008. Yeah, I worked with them for years, and but it was the stories before the charity, you know, dogs that just totally anecdotally told their human that they had breast cancer in their own way, with the bond that existed between that dog and that human, you know,
just saving lives.
Yeah, so it was the anecdotal evidence that fueled the charity's making, and then they channeled it into what we've got today. So, but yeah, dogs are utterly extraordinary, and I think we have still only scratched the surface of really understanding their greatness and the fact that they have emotional intelligence, because back in 2008, the jury was out on it, Hannah. Claire Guest even didn't think dogs had emotional, I know. So we talked about it a lot. And in the podcast I did with her, she says, Claire, I love Claire, you know, said, Anna, we are all coming around to it now. Dogs do have emotional intelligence. But you see, that's been since 2008. So we're in this melting pot. We have all this science, all this ability of MRI scans and all the rest of it. And just hundreds of people wanting to do right by dogs. And I just hope it all comes out right in the end.
Yeah, I just, you know what, and we've got time, haven't we? Like, we've got time to really pull all those resources together right now, and I think ultimately a corporate responsibility to do so, because there is so much, you're right, Anna, so much science, so much knowledge out there about dogs and their capacity, and so many people are trying to do right by dogs right now. I think we need a united conversation across the UK about what we're going to do and what is our conservation strategy for the domesticated dog.
I love that, a conservation strategy. Gosh, that's so brilliant. Gosh, Chris Packham would love that. I think we need to get Chris on board with all of this, because his love for poodles is just brilliant, and they're great. A poodle, just a poodle on its own, not mixed with anything else, for me is one of the greatest dogs. So adaptable and fun, and the only breed that doesn't shed.
I love it. I love it so much.
Hannah, please till you come back. So I feel we've got so much to talk about, but I've so enjoyed this chat, and basically all the links are going to be in the show notes.
Fab. Thank you so much for having me, Anna.
Well, that's our show, Mr. Binks. What did you think? Yes, it was lots of interesting food for thought. Oh, and yes, you're right. It is time for Woof of the Week. Dogs are a commitment, not a convenience. Well, I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, please rate and review the show wherever you tune into your podcasts. Thanks again to Hannah Molloy, and all the links to her amplified behaviour and to lots more are in the show notes. Thanks, of course, to Mike, my producer. Follow him at PodPeopleUK. And for me, give me a follow at APDAWG. What's that, Mr. Binks? Yes, you're right. We will be back in your feed next Sunday. But why don't you subscribe now? It's free. That way you'll never miss another show. Bye for now.
Pod people.